we're doing that because we want to make a difference, and we know the ripple effect of that will be hugely beneficial for you if you're able to learn what we've learned the hard way. We would like to save you the pain of all that hard way learning.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, we'll take the cane. We're your whipping boys. Whipping.
Yeah.
Whipping persons.
We've been there. We've learnt the lessons the hard way. Listen to us. We are here to share insights on the things that we do know work, and the things that we do know are not pop psychology, but hard research facts.
How creativity helps is and how's that work for you?
Okay.
And how's it work for me? It's not an instruction or even an answer for everybody, but it's just one of those questions you ask. And to me, it was asking others how it worked for them. And I realized quite quickly when even in my early advertising career, that I'm not good in a 9-to-5 situation. I have to have early. So since, I guess, my late 30s, everything I've done has been a part-time role. Even if I've been CEO, I've said, well, I've got to have some time off for doing other things myself. Yeah. Because otherwise, and I've never been very good at minding somebody else's store. This is I think, important, particularly for people with ADHD, when you get into a job and they interview you and you're expected to be I don't know, a bank person or one of us. How can you be? Because you're a human being. But then I remember seeing a presentation earlier in my advertising career of a woman who came out from the States, and she was presenting on Pepsi. Yeah. And God, did she lay it on with a trowel? Yeah. I'm a Pepsi person. And to prove it, she had the can of Pepsi in her hand and showing it with the label out and drinking it constantly through her presentation. I thought, what a bloody phony, such a try-hard. And I think that when you're asked to join somebody else's business, they expect you to adopt their whole manifesto and breathe it. And you've got to be a Dulux person or a Shell Oil person. And you're supposed to have oil or paint or whatever it is or jam, whatever you're selling, running through your veins. And it's so bloody phony, and it must be so difficult for someone who's creative and understands really what turns them on to actually adopt that and pretend to be what they're not.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting thing, and it's a unique insight on authenticity. You said part-time, and I got stuck on the word time because I think, and I'm really interested in your view on this because it really relates to creativity, and creativity is a chaotic process. It's not a perfect process. It is something that is actually beautiful and aesthetically pleasing and highly, highly creative. Happens outside of the rules around time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have these rules that we've superimposed around time that don't necessarily line up to the natural rhythm of things. So we have seasons, we have the cyclic nature of the sun revolving around the planet and the moon and the stars. But it all happens outside of the laws that we've implemented on time. We run our workplaces and our education systems around these times, and we try to superimpose time in a way that doesn't necessarily follow the natural biological rhythm of our systems. And if you're ADHD, you might relate to what I'm saying here, because I'm finding that we really struggle with that. And so when we try to work as an employee in a workplace, following those rules around time become an anathema to us, because they literally block our ability to hyper-focus the way we want to. So we might hyper-focus for days on end on a specific thing and deliver incredible results, but then we need a period of recovery. And so you find that a lot of really high-functioning ADHD leaders end up running their own businesses so that they can be entrepreneurs and navigate time their own way.
Oh,
do you relate to that?
Absolutely, totally. I've only ever had one job in my life that I didn't apply for. I was asked if I'd like to take it, and that was at Saatchi when I was asked to take over the Auckland office, and it's the first time I'd run somebody else's store, because I realised I'm pretty much unemployable unless I'm either own or a part owner or running my own shop. And it's because you know how it needs to unfold, particularly in a creative business. And I do remember one of the best insights I'd had, Johnny McCabe, who was our creative director at Saatchi's for a time, said, you've got to understand that creative people spend a long time doing nothing. and then they do something, and you spend a long time looking out the window.
Yeah.
And sometimes ideas come to you like a bolt out of the blue, and sometimes they emerge slowly out of the mist.
Yep.
You know, but you know it, and it sticks in the back of your mind. And I know that if I hear a phrase or an idea or a concept that hangs around in the back of my head for more than a few months, I've got to do something with it.
Yeah.
Alfred North Whitehead said that ideas don't keep, they're perishable. And if you don't do something with them, they die, and that's sad. So you've got to think, you know, how can I do something about it? And that notion of ideas is something that you've got to kind of grasp properly. Because one of the things I'm realizing in this book I'm writing at the moment is that only about 5% of the population are able to think. And I'm thinking in terms of think critically, who are able to take abstract ideas and hold two abstract ideas in their head and argue with them from either side to get some kind of resolution. And there's another about 10 to 12% of the population who think in terms of professional solutions or problem solving, like a lawyer or an engineer or whatever, design a bridge. So they think through what's required and what's all the mathematics and stuff. Or a doctor, you think, what do I need to do to replace this aortic valve or whatever it is, and what else needs to happen? Which are the nerves and which are the veins and aortas, or say the arteries that need to be connected to make sure that happens. And that's the thinking on a logical process, but it's not abstract thinking. Abstract thinking is someone's having a heart attack. How do I fix it? So that's you. Or you think, how did the earth get here? And what created matter? It's all that. And usually there's no answer to those things, but at least you cogitate them. And so few people do. But if you've got an ADHD brain, your mind will dive off into 60,000 different little pockets and being able to assemble all the components that you need to solve those kind of problems. And you shouldn't sneer at that. And my school report at age 10 said that Michael is inclined to daydream if he spent less time looking out the window and more time paying attention. Orders in class would not have to be repeated solely for his benefit. And because I was just off, and if it got boring, same in board meetings now. If someone's talking sort of boring shit, then I'm not really interested. And it's like when we discuss, and most board meetings tend to be about compliance and historical numbers. And I'm not interested in historical numbers. Oh, I am, only if they've gone wrong. But I'm only interested in the future.
Well, you can't look back to see ahead, can you?
No.
It just doesn't work.
You can't chart your course by your wake.
History never repeats.
No. Can't step in the same river twice. All that shit. Yeah. If you try and chart your course by your wake, you'll hit a rock. You've got to look where you're going. And so few people can really think abstract or broadly enough in the abstract to decide, what should happen. Like in business now, it's changing totally. And the advertising business has pretty much collapsed as we know it. No one really wants 60-second TVCs anymore. And I'd love to bring back jingles. I think music would be great, but there's no real market for those big budget 60-second TVCs because you can pretty much do everything else with AI now in short bursts. But what you've got to do is think of ideas. And AI can't think of ideas. It can implement the ideas. It can short circuit all the drudgery around research and rolling out the idea in some kind of format that people can understand because it's got good English, good grammar, but there's no excitement. There's no magic.
No, actually, the other thing I'm discovering about AI, and I'd be interested in any subscribers' feedback on this who are using AI, and I love AI. It's a fantastic tool. It really helps me, but it can't think like a neurodiverse mind. It's only able to think in a neurotypical, linear, logical manner, which is great, but there's no creativity in that.
No. And see, and the essence of creativity is like humor. Humor leads you up the garden path and yanks you off into the bushes. It's that yanking off into the bushes bit that actually is the insight, is the thing.
Yeah, it is.
And that's what makes you laugh, but that's what also makes it memorable.
Yeah.
And I love incongruity.
Yeah.
And AI can't be incongruous. Well, at the moment it can't. I don't know what it's going to learn and how it's going to develop. I worry about it going rogue sometimes, but because it could say anything you like.
Well, if it became neurodiverse, it would go rogue, wouldn't it?
It would go.
It would be a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, but see, that's the beautiful thing about it, because it's the neurodiverse people who make a difference.
Yeah.
difference always happens at the edges. It never happens in the centre. You never have good ideas coming out of a bureaucratic committee. It's nonsensical, and yet sadly in our culture we're basically driven by bureaucrats. There are more bureaucrats, for example, in Auckland City Council than there are in Brisbane. Roughly the same size, same scale.
Yeah.
I think in Brisbane, the number of bureaucrats in the centre is something like about 7,000. In Auckland, is nearly 12.
Wow.
What are we doing? Look at our government. We've got something like 61 departments. We've got 60,000 bureaucrats. No wonder everything's so bloody expensive.
Let's not get political. It's about creativity and chaos.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's where creativity doesn't reside.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't sit in consensus, does it? It sits in conflict. It sits on the boundary of where change and breakthrough grows. It's future focused.
Well, that's what I think we touched on it last time, that when I talked about the work we did at Saatchi's for understanding the psyche of the people in our organisation.
Yeah.
And a psychologist said that trouble, in Myers-Briggs terms, we were all on the intuitive side of the ledger. And that's dangerous because there was no one in charge of the Department of No. The only person who wasn't on the intuitive side was our CFO. He was great because he would say, "Hey, lads, slow down a bit here." And you need someone like that. You need someone in charge of the Department of No, rather than if everyone's in charge of the Department of Go, you're all flying off in 1,000 different directions. So creativity needs structure, just as you can't just have people scribbling on the wall. Well, except Bansky, of course. But see, even he uses a wall as a framework. It's not as if he paints stuff at random in the sky. He'll use a wall because the wall itself has meaning. The medium is the message, and his medium was street art, and so that the medium always reflected, even framed what he could actually put on a wall that actually made sense of it. And that's why I think that we need to be looking at all the time. How do I look at this differently? When is this wall just a wall, or when can it be a message that actually leaves an indelible mark in somebody's mind? And I often think about that, like in terms of authorship and the books. I've got probably about 20 years ago, I thought, what should I be reading? And it's interesting to know that about 70% of all books sold are sold at airports. Usually they're pot boilers, and mostly women buy them because they're bodice rippers, or they're sort of ripping yarns of some kind. Men tend to graduate towards non-fiction, memoirs, war stories, etc. You can just take the brain to figure out what they like.
It's a terrible gender bias. I prefer non-fiction. Well, I never want to read the books I review.
Oh Jesus! Yeah, well, I'm actually an eternal bloody romantic. Yeah. And my favourite stories that I grew up on fairy stories, Grimm's fairy tale, and Knights of the Round Table, and so on. But see, Einstein said, if you want your children to be intelligent, read them fairy stories. If you want them to be more intelligent, read them more fairy stories. Not because he also said that imagination is more important than knowledge. Yeah. And those stories about fantastic things and you're going in all sorts of different directions is really what it's about. And I think I said last time we talked about that psychologist who came and shrank us at Saatchi's. A trick she taught me in terms of how to identify creative people was to ask them, almost as an aside, if you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, would you rather be close to the rock or the hard place? Now, of course, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just how you answer it. Yeah. And so it's an indicator of the way someone's brain works. Not scientific, it's not, you wouldn't rely on it, but it's just one of those things you might throw in having a drink afterwards or whatever it is. But it gives a real clue to the way someone's mind works. Yeah. And I know I've done this enough times now to know that somebody of a linear mind, someone on the non-intuitive side of the ledger, will almost invariably say the rock. They'd be closer to the rock than the hard place because it's a storm. They can grab onto the rock and say. But a creative person would say, tell me about the hard place. Are we at sea, in space, on land? Is it metaphorical? Is it? And it's that way they are asking questions about it. And I know when I was asked that question, I went with the hard place because apparently, just by accident, I gave the right answer in terms of a creative person. Because I said, well, could it be a hard place because it's an oil drilling platform. It's a big steel platform, and it's got a helicopter on it and a bar. That was pretty. So you create and that's.
The bar doesn't sound like a hard place to me.
No, but it was a good place. It was, and it had a bar because it was a hard place. It was just as stable as the rock.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't know where we're going with this, but it's just kind of, it's those things that flash into your mind, at 100 miles an hour that you need to corral and systematize in some way. And that's why I developed that Wikipedia idea, because there's no point in having lots of thoughts in your mind unless you can join dots. Because I believe that creativity is about different ideas having sex, and they give birth to something that's different again. Just like Steve Jobs. He didn't invent the telephone, didn't invent the mobile phone, didn't invent the computer, didn't invent the photo camera, but he put them all together. They had group sex, if you like, and an orgy. An orgy. Yeah. But it's an orgy that's captured everyone's imagination, and almost every phone sold in the world now is a smartphone. And so that's how ideas progress, where someone conceives it before it happened. And if you recall, when it was 2006 or 7, when iPhones were launched, Motorola and Nokia were planning for little tiny microphones. We'll be talking into our wrists. Yeah, everything was going miniature, but someone went the other way. And anyway.
But look, you've got the light shining on your head, a bit like that projector, and you're joining the dots together and sharing your insights around creativity. So you've got the centre stage here, and it's really interesting to hear you reflecting on these things and pulling all these ideas together, like they're having sex, like you say. But tell us more about when creativity shows up for you. What happens? You get this idea, it goes round in the back of your head, and you realise you don't want it to go off, you want to use it, and it takes a wee while, it kind of like just permeates. Then what happens?
Okay. When I was younger, I had visions of being an architect. Yeah, that's one of my things. And I thought, maybe I could be an architect, but I wasn't good enough at maths. I thought you had to be something of an expert in mathematics. You don't, as it turned out, but that was the way I was steered at school. But my great-great-grandfather, a guy called William Beechner, was an early colonial architect in Nelson, and he designed some lovely old churches and neo-Gothic houses and stuff. And I take my sketchbook everywhere I go, and I took my sketchbook and I sketched some of these old houses that he had designed in Nelson in the 1850s and 60s. And my wife had taken the kids off to the beach with her mother. It was all fine. So they were home, and I got home with the sketchbook and showed them these drawings of the old houses that William had designed. And I thought, why can't we have one of those? And I said, well, they're in Nelson, and we don't live in Nelson. But and she said, well, why can't we build one? And it turned out that I was a director of her family's building company. And I knew nothing about building. But I'd taken myself to Polytech to do a construction diploma. So I learned the business of studying the dwang and bracing and all that sort of stuff, and water vapor, paper. So I knew how to build a house and went and tech. And I thought, so we've got a building company now. Why can't we build one? And of course, the plans are long gone. But I could sketch them. And of course, in those days, they're all designed for the street rather than the sun. And, a street appeal was the thing. And I thought, and you see it now, of course, in Grey Lynn or in Ponsonby, all those old villas that have been totally gutted and now facing the sun rather than the street, they've been transformed.
I have.
And I thought, well, why don't we start from scratch and design them like that to begin with?
Yeah.
And so I took William's old designs and made them face the sun rather than the street, and bigger rooms and all mod cons and stuff. But they had the appeal of that romantic neo-Victorian age. And we started a company called Replica Homes. And so for 10 years, basically, I went around the country, and I had franchise builders and that sort of stuff. I didn't know much about the franchise business because there weren't any franchise businesses at the time in the late 70s. And I wasn't charging enough. I had a business. I had a living, but not a business. It wasn't something that was really valuable to anybody else. So I eventually did sell it and went on to the next thing. But that was simply how I thought someone triggered in my mind, why can't we do it? Andrew saying, why can't we build one? Why not? And even right now, on Waiheke, I built a place in the vineyard. And I liked corrugated iron, the old sort of woolshed design. And my wife, my second wife, decided that she wanted French provincial. So we had two houses with a big gallery in between, a Kiwi cowshed and a French provincial sort of thing at the end. And the architect done a very good job in melding the two. It was a really nice house. But it was different, and I'm still in love with corrugated iron. And what I'd like to do, once I get this AI project up and running, is buy a block of land somewhere near the sea. I like to have a view of the sea, because when you have a view of the sea, the horizon is a long way away, and your ideas can go right out. And I'll come back to that in a minute, because I love ocean racing. How your ideas flow right out to sea. They're not constrained by walls and stuff.
Yeah.
But I thought, and so what I've done is just designed a couple of little cottagey things, so little modules. And I think I could probably build them as almost prefabs, and so don't have to go through the whole construction process. And I'm going to start a business called Wrinkly Tin Cottages, because I love that whole notion of the miners' cottages in central Otago. And there was a well-known, well, not very well-known, but it's become well-known, an architect, and a US guy, I can't remember his name, Stephen Atkinson. His wife, I think, was at Otago University, and he went down to Sydney. He loved those little, kiwi wool sheds, cow sheds, corrugated iron sheds, and he developed an idea called the Zachary House, which is a batch for his parents back in Louisiana in the States. And it's really simple, very sort of, and I think, well, that would be a great way to, rather than tiny houses, which are little boxes, let's do something that has a little bit of style. And I'd love that whole notion of they call it wrinkly tin, and I love to do wrinkly tin cottages that actually
I want one.
Yeah.
Especially if it's looking out over the ocean.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's it, and it's really simple and really easy, and it captures the mood and the idiom of New Zealand cottages in a much better way than, dare I say it, Jitagata does. We don't want brick and tile. We want something that's uniquely ours. It looks more like a whare than a castle, but that's kind of where we came from. And so that inspired an idea just by looking at it. And when I said, why can't we have one? I thought, well, why can't we? And it started that there's a whole trend there in the 70s and 80s of imitation colonial type houses. It went out of fashion, but I also started a company called Low Energy Homes. I wondered why that you couldn't. I'd met some guys at the university who had a $100,000 grant from the government to investigate what it requires to have sustainable housing, and they spent a pretty fortune examining it. And in the end, I thought, what does it need? And I spoke to an electrical engineer, had nothing to do with architecture. And he said, that you can actually heat your house on what they call it, with a massive slab, and with a concrete floor, will absorb sunlight during the day and then slowly release it, over time.
I had an apartment in the metropolis like that, and it was great. Heating bills were really low because it would absorb sun all day, and then it would permeate from the walls and the floor.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing though too. See, and I thought, okay, why don't we do that?
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, shit, why don't I design some houses? Basically, they were rectangular boxes. And forget the shape itself, because you can put clever things on it to make it a little bit different than a box. But it had north facing or north glazed windows, double glazed windows, and so there's about a net solar gain of 1 kilowatt per square meter per hour in glazing, as long as you store it. So you don't want carpet on the wall; you want concrete or a harder membrane that'll actually absorb the heat. And then, of course, there's a problem because you get too hot. And so ventilation becomes an issue. So how do you ventilate that? And one way I thought is that rather than, because most doors are basically 6 foot, so that there's a 2 meter max for a door, but the ceiling is 2.4, standard ceiling is 2.4. Why don't we have 2.4 doors? Leave the doors open and let all the heat, because the heat gets trapped in the ceiling. They have open doors that are 2.4. It has all the heat circulating right throughout the house.
Yeah,
this is what we did. And then to keep the exterior ventilation, have a one-way louver, so that the air comes circulating. So that you keep the heat in, but you keep the fresh air coming in to keep it a little bit cool too, so that you're able to in the hot days, open the louvers, let it out, but let it circulate all through the house simply by looking at it.
Right. Okay. Now I need you to connect the dots here, because I asked you a question about creativity and an idea that percolates in the back of your mind and how that translates into a creative outcome. And you've given me this as a scenario. So what was the original idea? It was just a random thought about, I could do this. I started sketching and then
I always started building houses.
Yeah.
I always thought about 10. And I decided to go back into advertising. But I'd like to crack it up again because
Yeah.
it's the best low energy type house I've ever seen. Because it's so simple. Like, no one else has done it. It really surprises me that no one else is using full height doors to allow warm air to circulate right throughout the house. Dumb.
So what we're seeing here is an example of an entrepreneurial brain being creative. And you're sharing the stories of how you've done that and then how it started originally as an idea banging around in the back of your head. And then how that translated into the reality of what it was that you were able to build out of that.
Yeah, and some of the houses, to keep costs down when building a house, you know what? We give the biggest room in the house to the car. That's fucking stupid. I mean,
Scotty might beg to differ, but I do agree. Yeah.
No, I mean, what do you, and you only lock up at night, no sun. And you say, well, it's big for the rain. No, fuck off. You actually you drive it through the rain and slow and sleet on the motorway all the time, subject to all kinds of things. But when you come home, you park it in the biggest room. That's nuts. It's much better to use the biggest room for yourself. Just leave it in the carport. I mean, if you want it covered, or I mean, there's no sun at night anyway. What are you protecting it from?
It's a bit like our urban oasis out there that is actually the place where you would park a car if you had a ramp that drove up to it, and it is a garage door, and I like it as an actual room where you open the door and let the world in, and you get airflow, and then you've got the view, and then you've actually got the whole thing of being able to make that the lounge. And funnily enough, that's where everyone gathers, is in the urban oasis. I will share a story from there one day soon. But it's a actual garage space that we've just turned into a room because it's nice because people can come and go from it really easily. And you open up the garage door and boom, you've got this space that is really inviting and easy to hang out in.
So picking up that though, I'd like to turn universities or schools into places like that. So you have a big room with a bar or whatever it is. Do all your learning online. And you can get all the information you need online. With in the future with AI, in the future with ChatGPT, you can do the research simply by what you need to do is get the inspiration, and you get the inspiration not in a classroom being taught at. You get the inspiration like people like us chatting about it and saying, "Oh, that's a good idea. Let's do that. No, have a drink." And just share ideas. I'd love to have a salon where people just swap ideas and inspire each other. You say, well, not everyone's like that. Well, fair enough, but they can listen. They can just join in. They can enjoy some music. I'd love to have an Irish band everywhere I go. You go like going to the pub there, and everyone chirps in, no matter how good or bad they are. God, it's fun. You see it. Oh, crikey, you see it in Bali. You see it in Asia. I love gamelan orchestras. They're the most restful. It hypnotic blink, 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 blink. You think, oh, they're gone. And you know, then they stop, but they all stop together. And no one was actually well, you couldn't see anyone conducting. There must be some kind of cosmic connection they all make to know, what it is to do it. But that's how you learn, and that's how you enjoy stuff.
Playing. How children learn. It's actually how creatives develop and innovate, and actually that is the creative process, is the freedom to learn and play. And some of our favorite musicians started out that way, just having fun, just getting together and playing around, a bit like Split Ends and Crowded House and groups like that actually just loved hanging out together and playing. Elemento P is another example of that. They were having fun and creating vibe, and yes, they got professional and serious about it as they became really, really qualified performance artists. But actually, if you listen to a lot of stories about music, which is another creative process, you'll find that is the way it began. And I think that's the beauty of creativity, is a chaotic fun process. It's making me think with your innovative idea there that we could set up Urban Oasis hangs and invite people in to just talk creativity.
Talk creativity.
Yeah.
Show off their pictures. I'm talking with some guys at the moment about having little mini bookshops and coffee shops and launching local authors. Everyone's got a story inside them, and my view is that that's where most of them should stay, personally. But sometimes if you've got enough gumption to write an entire book, then you deserve to see who else is interested in buying it.
Yeah.
And so this colleague of mine has set up this idea that maybe you launch local authors and local books. All they're going to do is write the book. And that's a bit of a problem, because I know when I first wrote a book, I didn't know, I had this burning idea, what I wanted a book about. how to have creative ideas. And I went to a colleague of mine and said, and he's a publisher. And I said, how do you write a book? And he said, well, you start. I said, well, what happens if no one likes it? Because you'll find out when you're finished. And that's the bit you've got to commit yourself to. And good creativity is not just about fiddling and saying you're creative, because you've got purple hair and, rings in your nose. It doesn't mean to say you're creative. You've got to actually do something. Professor Nancy Andreasen from Chicago University said that to be classed as creative, you have to have 3 elements. It has to be original. It has to have utility, to be useful, and it has to be accepted by others. In other words, you can have something that's original and useful to you, but of no use to anybody else. So those 3 things are quite important. And when I say it has to have utility, it doesn't mean to say it's going to be functional in the sense that it has to be able to work and be a machine and be able to use something. The utility could be it's just bloody pleasurable. It's lovely to look at. It's just beautiful.
Aesthetically pleasurable.
Yeah. So and the originality, it's like Steve Jobs. He didn't invent the iPhone, but he put together the phone, the computer, and the camera into one space. So his originality was combining it. And that's what I say. It's ideas having sex. That was a bit of a group sex thing, and something amazing came out of it when everyone else was making little talk pieces that went smaller and smaller. It's just and having an instinct to know what people really want. And sometimes you've got to show them. There's no point in asking, what do you want? As Henry Ford said, if I asked people what they wanted, they'd have said faster horses. So you just need to think, well, how can I make this, a little bit better? And how do you stop doing things that are novel, but are really useful in the long run? You shouldn't try and invent something that ain't broke. There are some things that we have and we use because we think that today's all different. No, it's fucking not. It's the same as it always was. André Gide, French philosopher, said, everything that's important has already been said. Trouble is no one's listened, so I have to say it again and again and again and again. And I think that is just so true. I mean, no one's been able to improve much on the knife and fork. I mean, they've, slightly different designs and so on. Or the chopstick. No one's really been able to supplant those things. There are some things that are really, really basic. And so we keep on thinking, no, we're going to invent something totally new. You don't. You just got to adapt it, or adapt the use of it, or adapt the way that it looks in some way.
Or merge them.
Yeah. Or merge them. Yep.
I think we've really explored the subject of creativity, and we have talked around it, and I really love your 3 rules that you brought in there about, what makes something useful as a new creation. And I think those are really good to reiterate, and we might focus on that in this podcast and use that. But I think also that people only have a limited attention span, so we should probably sum up about now, and hope you've enjoyed listening to this, because we're talking about ADHD and creativity. One of the things that I just see anecdotally all the time when I'm talking to creative people is that they often correlate to ADHD. I often find also that ADHD people are immensely creative, and they're struggling to figure out ways to use their creativity. So I think this is really topical and on point. And I do also think that it's important that people who are listening to this podcast know that they can get support, and that they can actually get coaching and guidance. I've got a program, and releasing it in my book, Hyper Focused, around how to really utilize that. But also Mike's got a program that can help you work out how to make it commercial. So we're going to put links to those in our post today when we share this with you, so that you're able to actually grab that, subscribe. We're actually about leaving a legacy of making the world a better place and helping people who are neurodiverse understand their unique talents and gifts. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, guys.